Okay, so what is the value of conservation? We all have different ideas when it comes to the value of conservation, be it in terms of conserving forests and their wildlife, conserving natural resources, or even community culture. As a zoologist hoping to pursue a career in this area, I wanted to explore the value of conserving certain species of animals. And although there's an abundance of literature available on this topic, I wanted to personally experience the value of conservation efforts firsthand. My first experience of conservation efforts was in South Africa in 2011 when I worked on a lion park that aimed to increase the population of the vulnerable African lion through captive breeding programs, with the aim of releasing their prides back into the wild in the future when it's finally safe to do so. On the lion park, I worked mainly hands-on with cubs aged 2 to 6 months that had been abandoned at birth. I also closely observed the natural prides kept in the lion park, and I had the rare opportunity to interact with some of the older lion cubs, whose paws were in fact larger than the size of your hand. This experience was mesmerising, and through my interactions with these majestic creatures, I began to see and to feel the value of conserving such a magnificent species. This fueled my passion to explore the value of conservation further. However, this time I wanted to study endangered wildlife in its natural habitats, so that I could get a greater insight into the factors that are causing certain species to become endangered, and to see firsthand the devastating loss of wildlife that's occurring in the absence of any conservation efforts. So last summer, through the conservation organisation Operation Wallacea, I travelled to Madagascar, an island off the east coast of Africa that's 7 times the size of Ireland. And I chose this destination as it is one of the top biodiversity hotspots of the world, with over 88% of its wildlife endemic to the island, which means that it can be found in no other country in the world. I began my research on the behaviour of an endangered species of lemur, the Cacachril sifaka, and I based my thesis on the findings that I got from my data. Our team of students and staff were based in the forests of northwest Madagascar, and we were based at 2 different study sites. At our first study site, we lived amongst a local Malagasy tribe that considered themselves to be well off, as they could feed themselves just once a day on a bowl of rice. From here, we travelled by foot to our second study site, and as you can see, our luggage was carried via zebu cattle carts, along what was considered to be roads in their eyes. At our second study site, we lived beside the largest of 3 crocodile-inhabited lakes in the area. And we were the only humans in this entire valley, which was absolutely incredible. There was such a huge sense of isolation associated with living in such a remote and undiscovered part of the world. Every day, we would trek through the forests in search of lemurs, discovering animals that I had never even seen or heard of before in my life. As you can see a few of them here. The colours of these animals were phenomenal. The birds, the chameleons, the lizards, and even the insects were the most impressive animals I've seen. However, although the forest patches that I was studying in were abundant with wildlife, in between these areas were large and vast areas, as you can see, of land that had been deforested and destroyed through logging, and all that remained in these areas were tree stumps and burnt pieces of wood. Now, this sharp contrast hit me right to the core, as I could see the inevitable future of the animals I was studying and surrounded by unless immediate conservation action was taken. By experiencing the results of a lack of conservation efforts, I could see the immense value of promoting conservation in these regions. Through the efforts of Operation Wallacea and the discovery of new and endangered species in these areas, we have been able to hopefully, in the future, make these areas protected so that logging will be no longer illegal. However, this is not necessarily the ideal solution, as in reality, logging is going to take place anyway, despite any law enforcements. Because as the members of the Sakalava tribe that we lived amongst explained to us, they have to continue to log because they rely solely on the income that they receive from logging to feed their families that 1 meal a day. So as I said, we all have different opinions on the value of conservation. And in terms of these forests in Madagascar, the ecologist and the zoologist, they value the conservation of populations of endangered species. The governments value the conservation of the forests in terms of trade routes and for political reasons. International corporations value the forests in order to maintain the ability to extract natural resources such as wood. And the indigenous tribes, they value the forest as their home, as their land, as their main food source, and as their source for daily uses of wood. And unless we take action immediately, their survival is non-existent. They depend solely on our future conservation efforts. In order to tackle this issue of conservation, I believe that we need to use a broader and wider approach to conservation management, an interlinking web of all these values, instead of using the traditional tunnel view of just one single vision of the value of conservation. Thank you very much.